Call to order the April 11th meeting of the Westford School Committee. Welcome, everybody. And we're going to right away go into an executive session for those who are watching. So we're going to do that motion in a second, and we will be returning to public session at 7 p.m. If you're on Zoom, for those who are joining us on Zoom, we'll just keep the Zoom webinar open during our 30-minute executive session. On YouTube, I imagine WestfordCAT will be putting up some sort of a screen that lets you know that we're out of session for a little bit. And just so folks know, I'm participating remotely, and Ming Chen is not in attendance tonight.
Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss a strategy with respect to units A, B, C, E, and G, and A, F, C, S, C, M, E collective bargaining, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will return to public session.
Second.
Thank you.
Sean with the second. Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote since I can't see y'all. Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and I'm assuming Gloria has not arrived yet. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, we'll see her soon. It is 7:00 by my clock, and so we will continue the public session of our meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that moves us into our consent agenda.
So hopefully,
everyone on the committee has a chance to see the warrants.
the warrants were sent around, and hopefully everyone has seen the updated agenda that removes the Blanchard School roof replacement project designer contract. That's not ready yet, and we may have a brief meeting later this week to approve that. So, motion to approve the consent agenda, including the 2 warrants, and that's it.
Second.
Catherine with the second.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. We'll do, and again, for folks who aren't aware, I mean, obviously you're aware that I'm not there, I'm remote, so we'll do roll call votes since I can't see everybody all the time. Gloria?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye. Aye.
Oops, sorry, could you do it? Sean, was that an aye?
Yes, it's an aye.
Okay, Valerie?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, that's 6-0. I think my dog barking is sometimes muting the audio from the room. That's what happened. I didn't hear the aye. So, okay, we're gonna move into public comment. We welcome comments from folks who are in the room and from people who are on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand on Zoom and we can bring you in. And if you're in the room, please come to the microphone. Just a reminder to start off by stating your name and your address, and we will we limit each commenter to 2 minutes just to make sure we have enough time to get everybody in.
Hi, my name is Crystal McNeil. I have been involved with the Westford Public Schools for the majority of my life. I was a student here in Westford since elementary school, and I graduated from Westford Academy. I have been a special education teaching assistant in Westford at the Miller School for the past 9 years. This year I have been working in a developmental classroom with students who have multiple disabilities, developmental delays, and extensive medical needs. During a typical day, I transfer students in and out of wheelchairs and in and out of gross motor equipment such as gait trainers and standers. Together we work on gross motor and fine motor activities such as taking steps, standing, kneeling, grasping, and pushing. I work to modify tasks for each student's individualized needs. I am also expected to have an understanding of each student's medical concerns so that I can appropriately monitor them as I work with each student one-on-one in case of a medical emergency. Prior to working in the specialized room, I worked in a general special education for 8 years. I have worked with students with Down syndrome, autism, ADHD, and other developmental delays. In my position, I am typically a constant for these students. I get to know them better than anybody. I figure out what subjects they like, which ones they don't, what triggers them, and what motivates them, and what their interests are. I typically find myself watching new Disney movies and researching Minecraft characters on my off hours as a way to connect to my students and let them know they matter. Additionally, I am one of very few employees who are safety care trained through the district and have been since 2016. This unique training requires me to be part of a small team that responds to students who are in crisis and in need of de-escalation. Because of this, I am typically placed as a one-to-one assistant for students with demanding needs and behaviors. I may also be called upon to support students in other classrooms or specialized programs. I do not receive any additional compensation for this. However, this is a daily demand that requires an annual recertification and carries a high level of responsibility. I put my heart and soul into what I do every day. My students bring me so much joy, and I truly love my job, my students, and my fellow staff members. This is what has kept me here in my position for so long. Unfortunately, in the role of teaching assistant, we are very undervalued, very underappreciated, and underpaid. I make $25,000 a year, and under our current contract, this is what I will continue to be paid, as this is our current top level step of pay. This wage is not compatible with the work I do every day and is not a living wage. I am asking the school committee today to support us in our goal for a living wage so we can continue the support and work that we do every day. Thank you. Sorry, I was a little bit nervous. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Yep.
Well done, Iris.
Alicia brought a paper over, if you mind signing in, just to put your name. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Iris McMillan, and I live in Westford. And what I'm going to say has to do with something that someone said at the meeting 2 weeks ago that I highly disagree with. Someone had mentioned that the teaching assistants are either educated and have received no training, and that is a huge falsity. Many of us have either gone through college, some of us, as myself, have masters in education, and we are continually being retrained on our professional development days. And I'm not going to go into the dissertation I sent to all of you because you could read it at your own leisure. But what I want to say is that we are highly qualified. We are professionals, and this is our career path, and we have chosen it. But it's very, very difficult for us to keep choosing it if we do not receive a living wage. And it's an embarrassment to me about what I'm receiving. When I started 14 years ago, I was at the top step, and I'm not going anywhere in terms of my monetary situation. So if someone ever said that we're uneducated, not trained, and unqualified, then perhaps they don't know what they're saying. Maybe they have not sat down with us and talked to us about what our backgrounds are and what we've done and what we've accomplished. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Hannah, can you move it down a little bit? I just keep hitting this. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see anyone online. Anyone else in the room for public comment?
Christy, and I've worked in the special ed department in Westford schools for 12 years. I speak pretty much for all my colleagues when I say it is a job we do because we love what we do. We love the connections that we make with the children. We love the people we work with, and we show up every single day with a clean slate to the children that we support, and they have tremendous social and emotional needs. I also have been safety care trained for many years. I work usually with behavioral children. And I cannot explain to you what it is to connect to these children and every day be there smiling and ready to welcome them and just support them in every way. And every single one of these people that do this job are so underpaid and so underappreciated. I cannot stress that point enough. Yet we still keep showing up because we love what we do and we love the children in Westford that we work with. I don't know how much more to say. I mean, we are at this point where just come, just watch us for a day or two. Talk to us. Hear our stories. We're not just numbers. We are people that make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, if not, appreciate everyone coming out and making your comments, and we are going to move on to our informational updates, and we'll start with the superintendent update.
Sure. Thank you. In the packet tonight, you will see 4 documents from the Valley Collaborative. So as the superintendent, one of my roles is also to sit on the board of directors for Valley Collaborative as well too. And so they share their annual report, their financial report. There's also a letter in there from their auditor. And then there's their universal financial report as well too. And so that's something that it's part of my responsibility is to share it with you, but it's not a presentation, it's just for you to have that information. We did receive it earlier in the year, and I thought it would be more helpful to share it now outside of our budget season because it is another organization's budget process. So if I was sharing it earlier, I thought it could actually pose some confusion. So that's why we are sharing that with you this evening. But so you'll see that in the packet. Earth Day is coming up, and Westford Climate Action Earth Day celebration is the 22nd. What we're excited about this year is that we do have a number of students who are participating as well. It's a challenge because it always tends to take place during a school vacation week. And so I know Westford Climate Action has been aware of that, and so they've been proactive in trying to think how can they partner with schools and with teachers earlier. So there have been projects that have been going on. We have students from both middle schools and from the academy specifically that are going to be participating in the events, but have also then just been doing different work around it. So I'm happy with the way in which we're trying to expand it so that it's a little bit more than. I mean, they've done a nice job trying to expand it more than just a day anyway, but the idea being that bringing it earlier into the school year helps our students who might not be available on the actual day still participate. So that's coming up, and that we've been sharing that information out. I know the principals are also sharing the information out in their weekly messages as well. And tomorrow, Dr. Cleary and I will, along with Ms. Lenhart and Ms. Moran, will be meeting with finalists for our Director of Equity, Curriculum, and Inclusion role. We had interviews last week. We were all very enthusiastic. We had 10 people on the panel.
Yes.
Yeah, there were 10 people on the panel. We interviewed 6 people, and we're going to be working with 3 tomorrow. And we're very excited, just even with what these individuals are bringing to the table. And we should hopefully have a decision to share with you soon.
That's great. Thank you for all that. Let's go to school committee updates.
Chris, can you see me? I was just thinking, we got to say something, right, for you to see us?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Valerie can kind of direct traffic a little bit when I can't see you, get Valerie's attention, and by proxy, she'll be good to go ahead.
Right.
Throw something at Valerie.
Yeah. Please do.
Healthy Westford is doing a cleanup across town, a spring cleanup across town on Saturday, consistent with Dr. Chu's update for Earth Day. So this Saturday, forgetting what date that is, the 16th at 9 a.m. There's no particular spot. It's anywhere in Westford. So go to a place that you care about, pick up some trash, and if you want to post photos of it, we'll take them and put them on the website. I'll be down at Edwards Beach.
Gloria?
This is an update on behalf of Policy Subcommittee. The committee has received a number of emails from concerned residents and parents, and we had some public comment to this effect. So as part of Policy Subcommittee, I was tasked with taking a look at those concerns. Dr. Cleary was kind enough to take the time to meet with me and discuss them, and I just want to report back and do it in this forum since some of the public comments were made in this setting. So our curriculum is a state-prescribed curriculum of standards for health and wellness That includes education on human health and development, puberty, sexual education. All of those standards are available on the WPS website. Anyone who is interested in the details can go to the WPS website. It's in the tab under Curriculum and Instruction, and all of those state standards are readily available. Some of the public comments were asking questions about a particular book called Sex is a Funny Word. And we were trying to ascertain the origins of the concerns about that particular book. That book is listed among many resources that are provided to parents in 5th grade. Before 5th graders embark on the human health and development lessons, there is notice to parents that these lessons are upcoming, and there is a set of resources that are provided. They're optional resources to parents if they so choose to use them. Sex is a Funny Word is one of the many books listed on that resource list. That resource list was developed by a number of wellness coordinators, including our own, and is presented in multiple districts around the state. That particular book is not part of our curriculum. It is not available in our school libraries. But it is an award-winning book. It's been recognized by the American Library Association, and for parents who find it a useful resource, it could be a useful resource for some parents. The other aspect I looked at was our policy. We do have a policy, P6123, Curriculum Containing Sexual Issues. That policy follows state law. It sets forth that notice will be provided to parents when such lessons will be occurring. If parents have questions, they have the opportunity to reach out about the content and materials used, and they can have a discussion with their building principal if they have any questions or concerns. They can also reach out to the Office of Curriculum and Instruction and Dr. Cleary. Parents always have the option to exempt their students from such lessons with written notification to the principal, and then those students will be provided with alternate activities, and they would in no way be penalized from opting out of those lessons. So that's really just to clarify what our process is. At this time, our policy and curriculum is completely compliant with state law. There's really no need for the policy subcommittee or I think this subcommittee to take further action. But because after those public comments, we did also receive a number of concerns from parents, I think it is also important to reiterate our support for inclusive education in the district, our recognition and support for diverse family structures and our LGBT community, and our full and ongoing support for our LGBT students.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you for the care and the thoughtfulness that you've taken to gather all that information, to communicate that information, and treating it seriously and letting us know what you found. And just on behalf of the committee, I think that's really helpful.
So the full policy update will be later in the meeting. We are on the agenda tonight, but I just wanted to let people know that we had originally scheduled our meeting for this Thursday. We are not going to meet on Thursday because, and we'll get to there in a second, there's an MASC event then, but we will be meeting on Friday, and we will not be meeting in the superintendent's conference room because there's a reorganization happening, so we'll be meeting in the little conference room down here, conference room 16. I did update the agenda today with Town Hall, but I wanted to mention that. And the reason we're not meeting on Thursday is because Thursday is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees Day on the Hill. Personally, this is one of my favorite events the MASC does every year. I love the Day on the Hill. It's still remote this year, which kind of stinks, but it's a great opportunity for committee members and the public to see what the legislative priorities are for this year. Things like, but not limited to, full funding for the Student Opportunity Act, full funding for the circuit breaker, continuing the free lunch that was happening, the universal free lunch. I know they're going to talk a lot about remote access to meetings and things like that. So I will be attending remotely. I encourage other committee members and members of the public to check it out. And that's Thursday morning, I want to say it's 8:30. Hold on, let me just make sure. 9 a.m., and you can register on the MASC's webpage. That's it.
Thanks, Alicia.
Anyone else? Okay, I had a quick.
Anything else from? Oh,
I-
yes, go ahead, Valerie.
I had a quick update. I just wanted to thank Dr. Cleary for the full-day kindergarten presentation at last week's joint meeting with the Select Board and the Finance Committee as part of the budget hearing that the school department had. And I personally was a little disheartened by all the hesitancy that we still heard and the questions that were out there. So I think that, to me, it's just a reminder to reiterate that it does not impact FY23, that it is an equity issue, that our vote to approve that was our commitment and our understanding that we are going to make that work within the confines of our budget, and that Westford was being left behind by the rest of the districts in the state, and that we are meeting the demand of the families in our district by doing that program. So just wanted to continue to reiterate that in this forum for anyone watching that may have kind of seen some of that play out. So. Any other updates? Students?
I think the biggest thing is that today was the first day of the capstone experience for seniors. So I know a lot of my friends and peers are off doing a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah. School's definitely, the vibe in school is definitely different with like the seniors. You know, there's a lot more people in the library now. And also just, yeah, it just feels different. Lunch is different, obviously, but we're excited for the seniors. We gave them, student council gave them a good send-off. Mm-hmm. So they're off onto their capstone projects. And also, quickly, I wanted to give a shout out to the WA Theater Arts, because I believe they won semis.
Yeah.
And now they're on to, I don't know, maybe someone can clarify this, but now they're on to regionals, I believe. And so they're doing a great job. And on Friday, we got a chance to go watch it, actually. A lot of the classes did, and they did amazing. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to them, too. But yeah, we don't have too much going on right now. That's our update.
Thank you. Yeah, and I can lend some clarity too. Yeah, I think they won the regional, and in a normal year they would be going to state, and it's a weekend in Boston of competitions, but because of COVID, they didn't plan for that this year, and so sort of normally it would be continuing, but they're stopping at this point. But they did win their regional round and had quite a few accolades and awards at that competition. So thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for your update. And with that, we're going to move on to business. And our first item on the business agenda is School Health Clinic update. Joan Mitchell, who I assume is in the room, but I can't see.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm sure I will see you soon, Joan. And I have your presentation that I can pull up.
That's true.
Chris, do you want me to just say next, or what? How does that work for you?
Yeah, and I'll try to predict as well. But yes, if I'm not predicting well.
Yeah, don't worry if you have to nudge him and tell him to move or go back. That's okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, it's really happy to be here. It's been a long 2 years, but I'm really thrilled to be here and to just highlight some of the things that the school nurses have accomplished this year. So I appreciate your time. The next slide, please, Chris. I just wanted to start out with a brief summary of the frameworks for the 21st century school nursing practice, and this is from the National Association of School Nursing. And it creates an overarching structure that includes concepts integral to the complex clinical specialty practice of school nursing. The framework provides a graphic illustration of the key principles of professional school nursing practice, reflecting the organization's stance for evidence-based best practice and providing focus to priority school nursing activities. The framework provides guidance for the practicing school nurse to reach the goal of supporting student health and academic success by contributing to a healthy and safe school environment. And as you can see by the diagram, the most important thing is the students and that they do have a healthy and safe environment so that they are able to learn. The next slide, please, Chris. I just wanted to quickly review the requirements to be a school nurse. You have to have a valid license to be a valid license to practice in the state of Massachusetts, a bachelor's or master's degree. You can't just graduate from a state or a college and then become a school nurse. You do need clinical practice, and it needs to be at least 2 years. You have to be CPR and first aid certified. You have to complete an orientation program. You also have to pass the communication and literacy skill test, which is part of the DESE certification, the same as the teachers have to do. Then after 3 years, you either have to achieve or maintain the certification of the National Certification of School Nurses or obtain your master's degree in community health, health education, and public health. Next slide, please, Chris. Thank you. I just wanted to review some statistics that I gathered, and this is from January of 2022, that there were 4,774 students, 906 staff. We did administer 2 EpiPens, which is lower than we've done in a while, and we've had 11 911 calls and transport to the ER, most of which were staff members, because we do have to take care of the staff too. Next, thanks, Chris. I just wanted to quickly go over some of the COVID numbers, which they are public. Everyone's welcome to view them. Just to review, in September we started wearing masks and we were contact tracing. That continued through October. In November we began our test and stay program, which was wonderful. That enabled so many students to stay in school, which was wonderful to see. And that ran through the end of January. And then at the beginning of February, we discontinued the contact tracing and we began symptomatic testing. And at the same time, we began sending tests home to both staff and students every other week. And we can continue to do that. And I believe I just got notice today that we have to do that at least through April 22nd. And then they'll have another decision then on whether we're going to continue that. But for right now, all staff will get tests the end of this week so that they can test when they come back from vacation. And just some of the quick numbers, we have done 989 test and stay. I'm sorry, we've done 920 test and stay tests. We've done 69 symptomatic tests, and we've only had 20 positive students from school. So it's really done well. The next slide, please, Chris. Just quickly, some of the health concerns, the numbers, the allergies and EpiPens, the asthma, cardiac conditions, diabetes type 2, and then the migraines, celiac, lactose intolerance, seizure disorders, ADHD, the behavioral health issues, which has really been one of our main issues this year. We've had a lot of students that just need a break, and that's really been one of our main focus, to make sure that the mental health of the students is so that they can learn. And the hospitalizations has been 31 students. I just have 2 slides here with the list of all the other health concerns that we deal with the students of the Westford Public Schools. So just to give you an idea that students are coming to school with many more health concerns than they did a while ago, and we're here to take care of them. And the health screenings. At the beginning of the year, we really weren't sure whether we were going to get any of the health screening in with all the contact tracing. Fortunately, and thanks to my great group of nurses, we were able. Our priority was just going to be vision. Students haven't had vision in 2 years, and they haven't really been to the eye doctor. So we were able to vision all the students that were slated to be. We're still working at the high school to get that done. The hearing and the BMIs were done, and we also. The oral health from the Board of Health has come back, which 273 students have taken advantage of that, which is a huge increase. I talked to the dental hygienist, and she said that many of the students have not been to the dentist in 2 years because of COVID. So I'm thrilled that we offer that service to the students. And that includes cleaning, sealants, and looking for caries, and then also offering referrals to students that really need to be referred to. We also did the SBIRT screening. We were lucky to get that done. We did that the last week of March and the first week of April. And that's a state-mandated screening that promotes prevention and identify early risk of substance abuse in adolescents. And if a problem is identified, appropriate action is taken. And we really have a conversation with the students to reinforce healthy decision-making, healthy choices that they can make in different situations. At the academy, we did 338 students. 41 were unavailable, whether they're absent and then 2 students opted out, 1 parent opted out. At Blanchard, there was 164 students, 1 student opted out, 107 parents had their students opt out, and there were 2 referrals made at Blanchard. And at Stony Brook, we screened 174, and there were no opt-outs and no referrals made. And this year, we did do the Craft Plus N screening tool, and that's the most commonly used substance screening tool for adolescents in Massachusetts. This year, it included many more questions regarding vaping and tobacco use, so that was really informational for the students when we asked them. So it was really a great updated questionnaire to give the students. And again, we collaborated with administration, guidance counselors, teachers, support staff, parents, Pediatrics West, and other nurse leaders. We also, the Westford Health Department, we were in contact with them many times through the contact tracing process. We also participated in giving the flu clinics and the COVID clinics with the Health Department, the Department of Public Health. I also continued to give weekly updates to DESE with the COVID numbers. And the Upper Merrimack Valley Reserve Corps, we also helped them with vaccination sites. We will continue to collaborate with guidance, deans, and administration. We continue to update policies and procedures as needed. We'll continue to help reduce the stress of students and staff, continue to assist students with emotional needs so that they're able to come in ready to learn at school. We'll continue programs to promote optimal health for students and staff. Then the last slide is just a slide of our nursing staff. And I have to say that we are very sad to see Sue Hanley leave. I have to say that she's been a fierce advocate for mental health issues in the past 22 years. She's been a school nurse. She's brought it to the forefront, even 22 years ago when she started. She's been a fierce advocate for not only students and staff, but the whole Westford community. And we wish her well, and we are going to miss her very, very much. And I thank you all. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask me. And again, I thank you all for your support this year. It was a really long year. It was an emotional year, but we really thank you all for all of your support. Thank you very, very much.
Well, we thank you. I feel like if we went back 2 years and, had this same presentation, we could talk about all of the things that you just highlighted so well, all the holistic things that are done in our clinics to support our students medically and the various conditions, medical conditions that, to see that list and then you just tack on what's happened in the last 2 years, and it's almost hard to imagine, and we just owe such a debt of gratitude to our nursing staff who have really gotten us and gotten our students. I don't want to say through this because I don't know that there is a through it, but have gotten us to where we are today, where we have students in school learning healthily, and just so much gratitude for you and all the nursing staff. Do we have questions or comments from the committee?
Yep. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate what Chris said, that it's all true. The past 2 years, the nurses in many ways became leaders of the building, right? Because there was so much that needed to be done related to the pandemic, and with contact tracing and keeping our students safe and healthy and at school. So thank you, Joan.
Well, thank you.
To
I have a wonderful team. I'm so blessed to have all the nurses that I have. I really am. I thank you all.
I do have a question, though, Joan. You mentioned how there's been an increase in your time in Westford of students with mental health related issues doing nursing visits. Can you kind of speak to that? Has that changed how that's changed your job, or has it changed your job?
Oh, yeah, it has. More students, especially this past year, the students coming back to school. It's hard for them to go back some of them to go back in the classroom, to stay in the classroom. So we try, depending on the age group, but we try to keep them in school, have them come for a break, maybe take 10 minutes, take some time, but we really encourage them to go back, unless they have a fever. But we really encourage them to go back to class. It's not going to do them any good to stay in the clinic for all day or whatever. So that's our goal right now. But there's definitely an increase of students with, we actually, I think 7 years ago, we added anxiety to our list, which before was stomach aches or headaches, and now it's like anxiety, reassurance, refer to a clinician or something like that. So that's how that's changed.
And I have one more question. I know this is a quick one. The oral health screenings, who are doing? You guys are doing those?
The Board of Health. Yeah. They have dental hygienists come in, and they do it in grades K to 5.
Okay.
So you should have gotten a notice, and then it tell you can sign up for it. Depending on what age, depends on what service you're offered.
Right. Okay. Great, thank you.
But it's been great this year. Some of those kids just haven't been to the dentist. It's been wonderful.
Catherine?
Thanks, Valerie.
You're welcome.
June, I'm curious, just a follow-up on Sean's question first on the what you're seeing with the mental health needs of the kids. Is there any one particular age group, or are you seeing it right across the board through the 3 stages of the schools?
You know, in the last 2 or 3 years, it's the students are younger that have the anxiety and the mental health issues. Great, you know, starting kindergarten, grade 1, 2, grades 3 to 5. I think every school has some issue that they're dealing with, you know, to make the students safe and healthy and be able to learn. So it's definitely become younger in the last couple of years that these issues happen. So anxiety attacks, panic attacks, depression.
Is there, you know, is your team confident with the resources you have in helping these kids, or is there anything, you know, on a wish list somewhere that you think would be of benefit
Oh, I
to
think we
help?
could definitely use more counselors or psychiatrists, psychologists at the schools, at all schools.
And just one other question then that I had kind of separate, that was separate to following on from Sean. The I don't know if I'm going to say this right, the SBIRT screening?
Yeah, SBIRT, yeah.
Can I ask, how does that screening actually happen? I don't know it, so I'm just curious as to how that's
So
rolled
right now
out.
we have this middle school nurses and myself and Kathy at the high school, and that the middle school nurses have the school psychologists help out. So this, we call the student out, we have a one-to-one, we ask them certain questions, depending on the answer to those questions, depending on what our next question is. So we're screening whether they have vaped, used alcohol, have they been in a car with somebody that's been drinking, and things like that. And from that, we have a conversation with them on how to make healthy choices. And we've gone through a training with that on how to answer certain questions and things like that, and whether to refer them or not.
Okay. So it's a conversation as
It's
opposed to
it's a one-on-one
kind of
conversation, yes, with all the 8th graders and the 10th graders.
Oh. Okay.
And that's been going on for a number of years.
Yeah. Yes, yep, yep, yep.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Can I make one comment about SBIRT?
Yeah, just come up to the
Yeah,
microphone.
come up to the mic. So,
Sue Hanley, the nurse at Stony Brook. So I think the SBIRT program is actually a wonderful program, and you know, children can lie to us, but the nice part about it is that we don't just say to them why they shouldn't be making these choices. We actually show them. So when students answer, there's questions, and they, you know, we say, over the past 12 months, on how many occasions have you had more than 1 or 2 drinks? And you know, for 8th graders, I mean, most of the kids are looking at me like, none, you know. But what's nice is at the end, if they say none to all of them, you have the opportunity to say, well, I'm so grateful you're making these choices, but you know it's going to get harder. There'll be more temptations. And then we actually show them grids. Like, we have this great visual of, if you start drinking before the age of 13, there's a 50% chance you'll become an alcoholic, versus if you wait till 21, there's a 9% chance. And then we have this other wonderful visual of 2 brains, and one is, they're both 15-year-old brains, and one is a heavy drinker and one's a non-drinker, and they're taking a memory test. And then we show them the memory part of the brain that the student who's not a drinker is able to access. And I think the visual slides are really helpful for the students. And then you ask them, like, do you know how old you are before your brain is fully developed? And a lot of them will say 18, and we're like, no, it's actually 25, you know. And I always say, too, to the kids, are your parents starting to talk to you about this? And some of them will say, yeah, they'll tell me it's dangerous. And I say, yes, it is, but we want to show you why. And so, you know, years ago, that was the DARE program. And the DARE program, that was great, but it was more about just say no. This program, to me, is saying why you should be saying no. And I personally, it takes a lot of our time, but I love having these one-to-one conversations with these kids. I really do. And I think it's a great program. Yeah, so, sorry.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Gloria?
My question was specifically about the conversations you might be having with students about vaping. What are the trends you're seeing? We know it's been a concern the last couple of years, and now, of course, with COVID, you have to worry about whether that could, impact a student's susceptibility to COVID or potentially worsen outcomes if they're vaping. So, what are the current trends you're seeing?
Well, definitely vaping has increased. There's no question about it. In the clinic, fortunately I don't see it, but I mean, I think all around, judging from the conversations that I had, yes, vaping is on the increase. We try to give them tools if they really need help. We have the resources for them to stop vaping. But yes, vaping is definitely on the increase, and we're trying to definitely give the one-to-one education to the students about it and how to help them. And if they need resources, the resources are out there to help them and where they can find that.
I had a quick question, and I don't know that it's necessarily directed for you. It might be more for the committee or for Dr. Chu, but the COVID numbers today, jumped up and brought April to almost match all of March, even though we're only on the 11th of April.
Right.
And I had a parent reach out and ask, how are we watching those trends, and if there's any talk of bringing back mitigation strategies, or how our response to an uptick would look like. So I just wanted to. This felt like a good point to bring it up.
The numbers have definitely increased. There's no
agenda.
question.
Yeah.
There's a new variant out there.
Right.
Right now, I don't believe there's one school that's been impacted more than another.
Yeah, it looked pretty even.
And I think even when I talked to the nurses, it's not, there's been, I think Robinson had 3 cases, but they were all different classrooms, so it's not like there was a pod of students that tested positive in a certain area, at which point we would, we could definitely talk to everybody and find out what you wanted to do. April vacations are either going to help us or hurt us. So, the kids are going to take a test before they come back. We're still going to be doing that. And we also are still symptomatic testing at school. All the schools are. So I think that's a great mitigation plan to we can get that if the student doesn't feel good, test them. And then tell them to, don't come back until you feel well. And if you still don't feel well, keep testing. And they do have those tests at home. And I think at Walgreens and CVS, the tests are readily available.
No, I was actually going to say. I mean, we are watching it. That's why we have the information there.
Right.
When to go from 0 for 3 weeks and then have 5 on a Monday, that can be alarming to some people. But I think the numbers are still relatively low and spread out. So we are still paying attention to it. But
yeah.
Great.
And this is a plug for it too, Chris. Right? People can still sign up for the symptomatic testing program.
Yeah, and the at-home, and to
they
receive
can do
them.
the at-home, get the at-home one too.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and that's right on the website,
Yeah.
front page of the website.
Because not all our families actively participate in that
That's
right
true.
now,
They do
right?
not.
That is true. Yep.
I wonder if the Friday principal emails could do that, encourage the return from break test. Like,
So we already have the numbers in
Yeah.
for this week.
yes, I know,
from
like
last
they
week.
wouldn't get
them till-
get them in time, but if you have the tests at home, that encouragement to just.
So they're getting the test at the end of this week, so they should test before they come back to school.
Right.
We can do
Yeah.
both things, because, Joan's talking about the students who have already signed up for it, who would be
Right.
getting it, but we can also just remind folks who didn't sign up but do have access on their own to just consider that this would be a really
Right.
good way for us to come back from.
I think anything we can do to encourage that. I mean, I can tell you, our family has used rapid testing, beyond the ones that we're getting from school, on the weekly basis, but just when there are events where, we're going to be around people and, using those frequently to just reassure yourself, not that they're 100% all the time, the tests, but I think that's a huge tool that we have that we didn't have a year ago that I definitely encourage people to take advantage of. As you said, they are available at Walgreens and CVS, and insurance does reimburse. Sometimes you can get, I think, Walgreens to run your insurance, and they don't charge you, but you can also submit for reimbursement for those tests, which have also come down in price as well, so that's nice also.
Chris, you can also still sign up for the federal free tests that they will mail directly to your house, and it does take a little while for that to kick in, but you can get 4 free tests per household mailed directly to you, and we've done that a couple times too.
Great. Well, thank you all very, very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. You guys are welcome. And wait, is that Charity
here as well,
McDonald
too.
back
Yep.
there as well?
Both middle school nurses are here, yep.
I thought I heard a voice I recognized, so thank you all. You guys are welcome back here anytime, you know that. And that brings us to our 7:45 agenda item, and it's 7:45, I love when that happens, and that will be our school guidance update with our guidance director, Lauren Clark.
I'm gonna stand.
Welcome.
Is everybody okay with that? I had a cup of coffee at 5:30, so I have some energy I need to burn a little bit before bed. Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Lauren Clark. I'm the Director of School Counseling. Chris, do you have some slides for me?
I do. I will share
Great.
those.
So tonight I'm just going to go over a couple different things. I want to address the counselor's role, some trends that we're seeing in social emotional needs. I'm going to talk a little bit about college admissions trends at this point. We have a couple new programs and new initiatives at the high school I want to review that we've actually been implementing this school year, and then a couple new upcoming things I want to feature too. 2 slides for me. One more for me. Thanks, Chris. This is my school counseling team. There are 8 school counselors here. I have 2 school adjustment counselors on our team as well. This was taken in August, right before school started, so I feel like we look really refreshed in that picture. If you took a picture of us now, we might look a little bit different, but that's our team right there. Next slide, please. So I won't go over every bullet in the school counselor's role, but I really want to address the 3 domains that school counselors support students in. So we have the academic domain, career, college, readiness domain, and then the mental health or social emotional domain. Okay, so I wanted to address a little bit about the social emotional needs of our students. So I kind of broke it into 2 different slides, risk assessments that are given at the high school, and then also hospitalizations at the high school from our high school students as well. So this information is as of April 1st. This school year we've done 17 risk assessments. That's an increase from last year's data, and I think that's just because of the hybrid model for next year. The next slide will show the hospitalizations, which were on par with last year at this point in the school year, with 26 hospitalizations, with 20 students who've been hospitalized, which means there's some students who've had multiple hospitalizations this year. And at the end of the school year, we might even hit that 22 students, hopefully not, but where we were at from last year. So we're on par with last year. So we have a couple screening tools at the high school. We have the GAD-7 PHQ-9. This is a screening for anxiety and depression. This is given by one of our school counselors, one of our school adjustment counselors. Every single grade level is given this screening tool. And it's given during advisory, so it's a small block of time throughout the entire school year. 1 assessment per grade level. The results are given to that one school counselor and then one school adjustment counselor, and then all the data is given to my school counseling team, and then we can meet with students based on that data. That was new in the 2019-2020 school year. As Joan already spoke about, that's given by the school nurses and given to our sophomores. Okay, moving towards college admissions trends. So we are, we have parted our ways with our seniors. They were on capstone as of today. We had a really nice capstone meeting on Friday for them, and they were excited to get their ice cream and scoot out of WA. So with our senior class, they've applied to an increased amount of schools this school year with 8.32 schools. Last school year was 7.8 applications on average that seniors sent out. Our top schools that I listed there are on par with previous years: UMSA, Northeastern, UMass, Lowell, UConn, URI. Those are our top 5 schools where students in our 22 class applied to for this school year. We've noticed the number of the students are still taking the SATs and ACTs to some degree, but since 80% of schools are really test optional at this point, students aren't reporting those scores. So they might take them, but they might hold them and not report them out to the schools. Next slide, please. All right, some new programs and initiatives for this school year. I broke it down to 3 different areas. So we have increased our mental health supports at the high school. We have increased in communication and collaboration, and there's a couple things we've been able to implement this school year as well. I'm going to go into depth in the next couple slides on those things. So this year we've added to the team 2 clinicians from PBH. PBH is Pediatric Behavioral Health. They are an agency out of West Boylston. They're delivering school-based counseling to our students 2 days a week. This goes through insurance. We found that there's a great need that our students need some mental health resources, and so we need to have some outside resources come and fill that need for us. So the clinicians come on Monday and Tuesday during the week. They started with it probably in the winter time. They're going to continue throughout the summer, and they'll be back at WA for 2 days a week during the fall as well. They also run a small group. It just started after February. It's about emotional regulation for a small group of students. 8 students are in that group. The 2 clinicians meet with 15 students in total. So it only meets the needs of a really small amount of students, but it is meeting the needs of those students. We've also this year been working with a consultant from Brookline Center for Mental Health. We're working with her to how to improve Bridge services. So Bridge is our transitional program. It's for students who are coming out of hospitalizations, for students who are out for a long-term medical and coming back to school. On that team is Tracy Murphy, Jess Elliott, Andrew Duquette sat on that group. Courtney Moran has been on that group, and Steve Cunha, our school psych, has been on that group as well. So we've taken a lot of information from those meetings with the consultant. We've been able to do referral forms, capacity indicators, so we're learning a lot from those meetings, and we're trying to improve the services for our Bridge program. NAMI and the National Alliance on Mental Health presented to sophomores during an advisory program this year. They had a wonderful, very raw presentation on mental health and mental illness. They'll be coming back hopefully next year to present to our sophomore class as well. And then this year we're very lucky. We have a counseling intern, Lauren Casaselli from Assumption. She's able to provide additional supports to our students. She's actually here during the spring semester and the fall semester, which is perfect for our group. It's really hard to have an intern just in the fall or start in the fall, so it's nice to have her start in January with us. All right, communication and collaboration. So the school counselors and I celebrated National School Counseling Week. This is always in February, a week long in February. The theme this year was Better Together. So it was our nice way to kind of collaborate and network with our students and with our faculty and our staff. So we gave out a little bit of swag bags to our staff there, school counseling, pencils, some candy to them. We had some welcoming signs when students arrived to our counseling suite. We had getting to know your school counselor on our Instagram site, just a different kind of things to highlight what we do in our office. The other part there is I have 2 newsletters up for March and December. There is one school counselor who's in charge of our monthly newsletters. Those goes out to staff, students, families, once a month, usually the first of the month, and it really is a comprehensive overview of what's coming up that whole month. Okay, so I have 2 more things about what we've been able to implement this year. One is the new curriculum, and then the other one is Power School. So we had Drew Carter from Holy Cross present to our students, our junior class, on Friday during advisory on the college essay. We've also paired up with the college essay guy, who is Ethan Sawyer. He is nationally recognized. He's a college essay expert. He's an author. He actually paired up with SCORE, which is our old Naviance that we send transcripts to colleges. We're implementing his new curriculum starting tomorrow. It goes out to our juniors. We're pushing out Google Posts to our juniors with little information on college essays, how to get started, brainstorming, and then final completion. They could be a 6-minute activity, they could be a lesson for 11 minutes, they range, and then we'll push out some more information in the summer. We find that some of our students have a hard time getting those college essays started, so this is just a new curriculum that we're pushing out. The last one for implementation is Power School. So it's our new scheduling software program. So instead of iPass next year, we are using Power School. We're currently, as of today, starting to build the master schedule, which will take probably this week and next week to build into Power School. It's been a huge team effort. We're really starting it from scratch. We came with the skeleton of it basically and really had to build it up. So it's a team effort with teachers, staff, curriculum coordinators, school counselors. And I said smooth so far. I want to knock on wood after I said smooth so far, but it's going okay. It's going all right. All right, a couple things that we're hoping to explore during the 22-23 school year. We're changing our online platforms. We currently use Virtual High School, and we are changing that to Eduseer to give more access to our students. It's for enrichment purposes, for summer school purposes, for students who are out for a long-term illness. They can enroll in an Eduseer course. So we have one school counselor who's in charge of that program, and she's working on and an SOP for EduSeer. We're building some curriculum around our GAD-7 and PHQ-9, so our anxiety and depression screening. So there will be a pre-curriculum before we give those screenings during advisory for next year. We're actually exploring a new depression screening. It's a learning series through Penn State. So we partner with the Massachusetts School Mental Health Consortium, and they are piloting a new depression screening. So what we did for this year is we wrote a letter of our interest for this new screening to learn more about it, to explore it, to potentially pilot it. The pilot wouldn't come out to the 24-25 school year, but for next year it's just really starting to explore the new series. So we have one school counselor who's in charge of that. We've paired up with the two school counselors, or I paired up with two school counselors to talk more about the programming during advisory. Advisory is a really comprehensive time for school counselors to push out our curriculum. So we love having that time built in every month. And the counselors in charge of that do a wonderful job of pushing out our curriculum. We've talked about programming for next year already and maybe changing it up a little bit and adding a couple different presentations. So we're currently working on some changes there. Two more for me. So the American School Counseling Association, all my school counselors have memberships to that, to the national organization. And we actually, we purchased some specialist courses for each school counselor for next year. So it's a really nice PD opportunity for the school counselor. So if they want to explore a specialist course in grief counseling or college admissions or diversity, it's up to them, but they can explore a whole range of different courses. Self-paced, they can take the whole year if they want to, but it gives them some just updated PD. And the last one, I'll go through the next slide. Thank you. So we're moving towards and transitioning to the new name of school counselor instead of guidance for next year. We're changing our signage, our website, our letterhead, and for all the reasons that are bulleted there. But the school counselor name is proactive, it's data driven. It was adopted by the ASCA, so the American School Counseling Association, in 1990. So we're a little bit behind there, so we're going to push forward with that school counseling name for next year. In Massachusetts, you can no longer get a master's degree in guidance. You can only get a master's degree in school counseling. So we're excited about that transition as well. I think that's it. How'd I do with time? 15 minutes?
You're great on time. That was great.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. And again, I feel like, again, talking about a group of educators who are on, I think, the front lines of so much, especially in the past couple of years, it's just been compounded. And you had to do Power School. Or got to do Power School, whatever you want to say it, but you're on the front lines of the Power School implementation, which is exciting, I guess. I'm a kind of a software nerd, so it's kind of exciting.
It's better than iPass. We'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah. So thank you for everything you and the counseling staff do, and for coming out tonight. And I know we're a committee that care a lot about the well-being of our students, and social and emotional health is on our minds a lot, so I imagine there might be a comment or a question or two from the committee.
Sure.
Sean.
Thank you. Lauren, could you speak to, are you guys using the panorama results at all, or is the social emotional screening that you're doing is more focused on more high-risk students? Is that?
Yeah, so Panorama, Brian Rourke is in charge. He's the curriculum coordinator in charge of that program. It's not a screening tool, though.
Right.
So that's not an anxiety and depression screening tool at this point. What they did is they did a survey in the fall, and they just did one recently for the students. And Brian will review that data with the admin team and the CCs. But that's not a depression and anxiety screening tool.
Okay, so that doesn't give the type of information that we're looking for in this GAD and PHQ. Or geared towards that. Okay.
Yeah. So it has the capabilities to come up with. It looks at like academic data. It will eventually pull in from Power School. Has academic data, has behavioral data. You can put notes in. It might identify a student as an at-risk student, but that's a little bit ahead. So that's a couple years down the line for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I zoned out for a second. Catherine.
Actually, just to follow on from Sean's question again, regarding the anxiety, depression screenings you're getting, I'm just interested if you get information in that is kind of suggesting where the causes, you know, or what's the triggers for these kids in terms of feeling these emotions?
So the screenings don't tell us why they would feel that certain way. It just indicates if they're in a certain, if they have a certain score.
Okay.
If they're in a certain kind of zone of it. So we'll, depending on what the students score on that, we pull them down to our office and have a conversation with them. That could result in a whole bunch of different things. That could just be a conversation with the school counselor and the student. That could be a call to the parent. That could be a risk assessment. That could be a hospital, you know, eventually send out for a screening to, you know, a hospital. But it just depends on the scoring.
So we don't have any kind of ideas if there's any patterns emerging or as to what the triggers might be, or
I think it ranges.
okay.
Yeah.
And just one other question regarding the hospitalization numbers.
Sure.
Do you have an idea on if all of these students are on IEPs, 504s, or you know, are they typically on an IEP or not?
So that data's in my spreadsheet, and I can get you that data. I just don't want to rattle off something if I don't have it concrete.
Okay.
So of the 26, how many are on plans?
Just well, there's 20 students, 26 hospitalizations.
Sure.
Is that, you know, when we have repeat students or students repeating hospitalizations, is that typical? Or, you know, it
Yeah,
just
it
seems a bit concerning looking at the numbers.
Yeah, I think it's an increase for this
Yeah.
year, but the number's on par with the previous years.
Yeah.
The one that is very different is the risk assessments. Those numbers
Yeah.
have really fluctuated. Hospitalizations seem to stay steady,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And who conducts the risk assessments?
The school counselors.
School, and anybody is able, it's not as the social worker or a social worker or an adjustment counselor?
Either.
Okay.
Yep. School adjustment, school counselor.
Okay.
Yep.
Catherine had all my questions. So Gloria.
Thank you for all of that information
Welcome.
and that thorough presentation. The question I have is the screening tools you use sound like they're robust and helpful, but I know you're only able to screen students at a point in time. Often, you know, as parents, as committee members, we will hear from families who recognize that their child may have a concern about a peer. So if students have concerns about their peers, they're concerned about the safety or mental health of a friend, what advice do you give those students or for a parent of that child in terms of how to handle that safety concern and how to approach to help protect their friend?
Yeah, the school counselors have a good pulse on the students. Our office is pretty busy with students coming in and out, and I think students might come in groups to report something like happened today. 3 kids came down to report something about their friend, and I think they'll find their school counselor, and then we'll kind of tag team or do what we can as a group. We always have a counselor on call as well, so if your school counselor's tied up with a meeting, then we have a counselor who's on call, who's booked for that day to be with that student in need. But students have the trusted adult at school, whether that's a school counselor or a teacher that they might go to, but we really try to address the needs of a student. We have a good pulse on the students.
And I think you just answered my follow-up, which was the students' access to counselors in a need. Is that system working with the on-call? Because I know we'd had feedback from students in the past that sometimes they'd go to try and talk to their counselor, but if their counselor wasn't available, they weren't sure what to do.
Yeah, the counselor on call seems to work well. If we also have QR codes on our door. So, for example, if I'm in a meeting and my student just has a college admissions question and they don't need to go see the counselor on call, they scan the QR code, goes directly to my email, and then I know so-and-so checked in to see me that day. Yeah, so it's actually pretty cool. It's pretty cool, yeah. So there's obviously email check-in with an admin assistant. You know, there's a lot of ways our students can access us.
So, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, hi.
My question is for students looking for mental health resources, where can they find this information?
So we have a comprehensive list on our website. Yeah, on mental health resources.
For students who maybe don't check the school website, is this like posted on some kind of social media?
Yeah, sometimes Miss D runs our Instagram account, and she might put a highlight for our website on there. Maybe that's something that we should be highlighting sooner than later, though. I think we don't think we don't get a lot of traffic on our website. I think, is that what you're indicating? We should put it on social media sites, maybe?
Sometimes I just think students aren't aware of the resources. Like
Yeah.
students who I talk to, like my friends even, if they are struggling and I tell them like they might not know about the website or really that they have these resources, or the resources who are for those small groups or kids who might be at a more extreme level
Sure.
of need, like kids who maybe aren't there if they need resources. I think sometimes they don't know where to find them.
Yeah, I think that might be a better thing that we push out through social media too. So this year we tried to implement a student voices during a lunch block. So on Wednesdays we wanted to we post that on social media, to have students come down and share what they want to share with some school counselors that are having lunch with them. And they'd come down during their lunch block, and that gave them a little bit of time to have an open dialogue and an open conversation with some students. It wasn't as well received as we thought it would be, but that's something that we might be able to work on for next year too. But thanks for the suggestion. Hi.
Hi. I was just gonna say that. Well, so two things. So I didn't actually know about the school counselor that's on call at all times, and
Okay.
possibly it's because I just maybe haven't taken the time to look correctly. But I was wondering, in the guidance office, is that posted anywhere that like is that there's a school counselor on call at all times if you can't see your counselor? Like I know about the QR codes and everything, but is it posted anywhere that
We put it a lot in our newsletter, maybe another resource that students aren't seeing, but that's something we can highlight in our office too.
Okay,
We
yeah.
usually just post it in our newsletter and on our website.
Yeah, or I think it could also be helpful to tell, because there are the three, Mrs. Renalia, Mrs. Brown,
Yeah.
and it might not, it may not be their job at all, but I know they do see a lot of students come and look at the doors, see that their guidance counselor's not
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and move away. You know, if the message was told to them that, hey, you can let the students know that if you really need, there is another, because I didn't know about that, and I think that maybe some other students are in the same boat.
So Ms. Fernalia, she comes up with a schedule, so she's aware and she lets students know, and she usually comes to find us.
Okay.
So if Ms. Hyder was busy, then they'd come to my
Yeah.
office if they knew I was on, and she'd actually walk the student to my office to introduce them.
Okay.
So she's aware of that one.
And then also, I was just gonna say, maybe it might be helpful, you know, if you're putting things out on social media and maybe it's not being received as much. I was thinking that you could definitely use the bulletin boards in our hallway. Like, even though it seems kind of old school, we really do like look at the stuff that we're walking past in our hallways, honestly. And I think that's a great way to put stuff out, whether it's like the lunch thing that you were talking about, or maybe you put a big sign like, what do you do when your guidance counselor's not here? And I'm sure people will look at it. I think there's so much foot traffic during the day that it might be helpful for that to go up, and you might get better.
You gotta love a good
Attendance, yeah.
old-fashioned poster. Right?
Yeah, you do.
That's good. That's a good suggestion.
Thanks.
Well, I wonder if like the civil rights reporting form, something like posters in the back room, where you can put the on-call guidance counselor in there too, because you have the captive audience. It was something we had discussed about the QR codes for the civil rights reporting form, that someone may not feel comfortable walking into a public space and taking down that information, but maybe in a more private space like that, they might be inclined to.
Can I ask the two of you a question quickly? As student leaders, do you have platforms where you're pushing out information? Like if they were to connect, if the counselors were connecting with different leaders of the student groups, that might also be another way to kind of push information out, or no?
We have platforms as a student council, and we have our class officers have platforms, but we don't have one as.
I mean,
No, but that's good.
that's
kind of what
very
I'm talking-
good.
that's what I meant.
And you know, we do a lot of like, you know, if a specific class is running something, our Stuco account. I mean, they have like 1,000 followers because of everybody in the school follows these accounts. So, I mean, definitely there could be collaboration between the groups. We definitely do have people. I mean, I know Maya, our publicity coordinator, will post stuff for class fundraisers, even though it's not pertinent to Stuco. It just helps get the word around. So, I think it's definitely possible.
And they work together.
Yeah.
I mean, we post something for Stuco, and then everyone who's on
Yeah.
Stuco reposts it, and then the class
officers
page also
repost
shares
it.
it too. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot that goes through social media.
It would not be, at least it would not be my first thought to give information to a student and ask them to disseminate it, right? But that kind of makes sense at the academy, more so than,
To repost, yeah.
yeah,
Tap that network.
right.
Anything else for me?
I don't think so.
Chris, you all set?
Yep, thank you so much, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item is school update to our school facility rental procedures. And I assume Pat and or Paul are in the room?
Pat is with us.
Paul was unable to come today.
Okay.
All right. We're so glad to have Pat, thank you.
Yeah, you could. And
Please.
I can help out as much as I
I
can
never know
uh,
help out.
what to do when Chris can't see us. We're quite the pair.
I can see Hannah, Magna, and Dr. Chu right now, so, you know.
Okay, so due to COVID, of course, the facility usage program was suspended, but as soon as we started to somewhat see the light of day, a little concerned where you're turning here, but as soon as we saw a little bit of the light of the day, we're getting slammed already with facility usage requests. And the staff member that formally did this, you know, the business office staff went down by 0.75. And that 0.75 person, they did facility usage. So part of this restructuring of the facility usage program was to create a self-funded coordinator that would handle all of this. And what they would do is they would be the liaison with the outside user of the facility, as well as approving if there's overtime involved for our custodians. Of course, they can't go in, they can just hand in approved timesheets, and then the business office would process the payroll. In addition, they would invoice as necessary, and then of course the business office would be involved in processing the check itself. But this person would be managing the process and communicating with the front office staff. One of the things that we heard from the schools was that we don't have a person to do this and we don't have the bandwidth to do it either. So the intent is that the fees generated, which are very reasonable, we found a set of fees from like, oh gosh, over 10 years ago. They're really not that far off for what we're asking now. The fees that we structured are pretty much data driven as far as the custodial fees. Time and a half for overtime based on the highest pay for a custodian, double time on Sunday based on the highest salary for custodians. And they're a little bit higher than they were like 10 years ago, but they're still in the same ballpark. And then some usage for individual facilities, you know, a usage fee for a classroom, a usage fee for an auditorium. And so we're not coming up here and say we have the be all and end all. What we're saying is this is our proposal. We'd like to go with our proposal effective June 1st and take it through FY23 school year and probably review again a year from now and see if we kind of need to tweak it along the way and see how it works out. The part of it that's really new is the creation of a stipended position. But the stipended position salary would be generated from the fees, right? So the hope is that this is not a drain on the general fund. That's the last thing the general fund needs. But the hope is that this is self-sustaining. And recognizing the school committee's structure of not voting for something at the first meeting, the hope is that we would have tentative approval to advertise for the position as anticipated, since you will not have approved the position yet. But if we're really shooting for a June 1st implementation, which is what we are, then it would be great if we could get that out there and see if people are banging down the doors for this position or it's not as attractive as we think it is. The nice thing about it is pretty independent. The other thing, though, is we're going to require a high level of responsiveness.
It's also something that we brought to the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee as well too, just to help us kind of flesh out and get questions.
And policy has looked to see how it interacts with our policies as well. So it has
Thank you.
already gone through some review, but yeah, we did want to you know, if we could officially spread it out over the 2 meetings before we have the official vote, but, you know, depending on how the conversation goes here, I think there'd probably be a sense of the committee that it would be safe to proceed and to start advertising pending that final vote on the 25th. Do we have comments or questions from the committee?
Yeah, Pat or Chris, whose responsibility did this fall to pre-pandemic?
A position that a woman that was in the business office that's no longer there, and her whole position is gone.
Okay.
I mean, and before that, it actually was falling on some of the school-based positions as well too. There was a position that was shared between the 2 middle schools that was reduced, and one of the expectations of that person was to help with all the facility at the middle school level, and so then the bulk of it was falling on the schools, and the purpose of this is trying to find a person who can be that central figure that is truly managing all of the communication with the parties that are interested, because what ends up becoming a problem is dealing with making sure insurance is there, making sure that the applications have been filed, making sure that if people have questions or they want to even, you know, ask different things about different sites, that was taking a lot of time at the school-based level. And so now this person, I think, as Pat said, this person would be communicating with the schools to make sure that there weren't any conflicts, but it would be taking that massive responsibility of the interface and communicating with the outside partners specifically off of the school.
So in a way, this is, at least if we look to pre-COVID, right, we're kind of filling a vacancy almost, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we're creating a new position, and it's well thought out, and it seems to be more of a coordinator title, but it's certainly something that we need, right? This is not just being invented out of folklore.
And there's no overhead, right? It's not a staff position where maybe they do or don't qualify for benefits. It's a stipended position. They would hand in a timesheet. Right. We see it ebbing and flowing at different times of the year.
Is this to work from home, or is this?
Absolutely.
They can work from home for
this?
Absolutely.
They could. I mean,
so they don't have to be in the office.
No.
No.
They have to coordinate, right? So they'll have to coordinate a fair amount with a fair amount of people. But yes, they can absolutely do it from home. We envision at this point, unless the person hired has a better vision, we're thinking that the calendar would be a Google workbook with each building being a sheet, maybe within each building being different areas. That's something they can structure. But Google makes this all easy, right? And we did look into some of the software options, but they're pretty costly. They're pretty costly. So we thought, and you'd still need somebody overseeing it, right? So we thought, let's see this. If in a year we think, okay, there's a better way to do this, then we'll be back here in a year.
And I will say, with Paul's experience elsewhere before coming here, he had developed and participated in programs where there was a greater use of the facilities from outside groups, and we were not doing that. We do provide access specifically with our town partners quite a bit, but we turn a lot of people away, and definitely even before COVID we were, because we just didn't necessarily have the capacity to administrate it, right? And so this would help with that.
Gloria?
Yeah, I can certainly speak to this from the policy perspective. I took a look at the relevant policies. It's P1201, use of facilities, P1202, rental process, and P3403, lease and rental of school facilities. And Paul and Pat were great to work with in terms of making sure that the documents that are in our packet tonight are consistent with our current policies, so there's no need for any policy updates or changes at this time. The things that we would be approving are the new stipended position, as Pat has outlined, and the schedule of fees. And our policy, 3403, does state that we are supposed to be on a regular basis approving the schedule of fees. That has not happened in my tenure on school committee, so that's something that would bring us into better compliance with our own policy, and is something we should make a habit of going forward. And certainly, you know, if this goes into effect June 1 and you and Paul find out through experience that you do want to tweak policy and you do think that some changes would be helpful and would give you some more flexibility in implementing this, you know, we're happy to do that going forward.
Sounds good.
The other thing I'll just add is, as you were talking about this, I'm starting to think about community groups that would probably welcome this opportunity. Because of COVID, it has become harder and harder for local community organizations to find places to meet or to switch back from, you know, they may have moved into Zoom land. A lot of those groups are meeting online, but are now interested in the idea of moving back to meeting in person. And it's tricky to even figure out what are the possible spaces. So to have our schools available to provide that community resource, since we do have space, I think would be really, really good for the community and just furthers that school community collaboration. I think that'd be great.
Why don't you go ahead?
On that note, actually, I was going to say I really appreciate it from the community perspective, because having watched my husband as a scout leader try and book things, and it always falls on the school secretaries to try and coordinate that, to be able to take this off their plate and put it in one central location, I think that's phenomenal. And I really appreciate that the finance subcommittee and the policy subcommittee were able to work with you. That's exactly how those things are supposed to be happening. So I really appreciate that that has been going on. So I love it.
I just was going to ask if you could speak to, I know you said that the fees were sort of baselined with the custodian, the coverage, right? Did we do was there any work done to kind of compare to other rental options in the community or surrounding communities to see if we're...
There was not. We really just based on, we don't want the school district to incur any cost, right? So
Okay.
even if the neighboring district charged 25, but that didn't work for us, that
Sure.
wouldn't work for us, right?
Right.
So what we did is we charged on the higher level custodian fee, the higher level salary guide, but that was done on purpose, right? Because if somebody's not using an area where they're gonna incur rental costs, we need some leeway here to generate a successful program.
Right.
So if in the end we wind up, if I remember correctly, I think one of the fees is $38 an hour, $45 an hour, I think, for OT for custodians, if I remember correctly. But let's say we have a custodian whose OT is 40. Well, that really makes the program work the way it's meant to, because we are supposed to be generating some extra money because we're going to be paying the stipended position. Plus,
Sure.
remember, they're heating, they're lighting,
Yeah.
right? They're all those soft costs. They're using our soap, our paper towels. So it shouldn't just be a labor,
Yeah.
covering labor. It has to cover a little bit more than that.
Great. Thank you.
Can I ask Pat, did you just kind of do a guesstimate or predict kind of what the anticipated revenue might be from this?
So there's a big unknown to this, and that is what SSPA is going to do. So that would change our financials substantially. So we looked at it a little bit, but that decision's going to be a game changer. But we'll bring in money, but then we'll expend money. But
So this position, if we do, hire someone and we find we're not actually being able to fund the position,
It would go away.
it would go away.
yes, without a doubt, we'd have to
Like-
come out. That's why I can't stress enough that this is our proposal.
Yeah.
We don't come to it lightly, but we don't come to it with 100% assurance that this is the right model. We may have to tweak it.
Okay.
And I think I know the answer to this question, but just for everybody else, there's a revolving account already existing for this that we would then sort of hadn't been used maybe or was dormant.
That's exactly right. So it was used a little bit this year, because if you remember, we're paying somebody a little bit this year to handle some of the usage that's involved, but there's very little usage going on right now. I should have reviewed the balance in it. I don't remember the balance offhand. Yes, we're not gonna go in the red immediately, but we don't have a phenomenal reserve either. Probably about, I don't wanna put a number because it'll probably be wrong.
Well, that's
But-
okay.
Yeah, I don't like to give numbers.
You don't
Just-
like, you don't
but
like to
just-
do that, we know
Yeah,
that.
I
But
know.
just that the mechanism is already created.
Yeah, so there's
we
already a
don't have to
revolving
create a
account, that's
new
where the
account.
money will
Yeah.
go into.
Yeah.
The any kind of OT or anything like that will be charged to that revolving
Perfect.
account, and then we'll keep an eye on it and see how this goes.
Yep. Great.
So the only thing I guess the ask is for tonight is for approval to advertise for the anticipated opening.
Well,
If I
and
can-
we can do that. We can do that without, they don't have to give us specific approval
it.
to that. If they don't approve the job description, then we can't fill the job, right?
Right.
But, so that you don't need to take a vote for that. We will move forward with posting it as anticipated.
Right.
And we'll let you know, and then if you don't approve it or you have other questions or concerns, we can make those adjustments.
Similar to the curriculum.
DE, yeah, the-
I think that's right, and we're not hearing major objections from the committee. You know, I think there's consensus that that would be a safe path forward.
Yeah, I think, we can comfortably give that thumbs up.
Right.
Please proceed, do what you need to do, and we'll take our official vote next.
On behalf of Paul and I, thank you.
Well, thanks to you too. Okay, that means it is time to talk about school calendars.
Okay. So, I'm going to try to explain why there are 3 drafts in this calendar that are here, and none of them really look anything like what you last saw. So, draft A, when we were beginning to think creatively to see how can we continue to bring some of the priorities that have been shared into another draft, and we were looking at draft A, we actually discovered that we had miscalculated the number of days that were in April. So we thought that there were only 14 days from an original count that multiple eyes had seen, and we're glad that eyes came back and saw it again too, that we realized that we were attributing 14 school days to April, possibly because we saw Good Friday and it didn't register at that moment in time. But there really should be, there are 15 days currently on the calendar in April. But since there were only 14 days that we thought were in the count, we needed that extra day in June. So that's what put us to June 20th. All right, is everybody following that path so far? So this first revised A calendar is actually the same calendar that we talked about, except we made that correction and realized that the last day of school for that calendar should be June 16th. It's still an early release day. It should be June 16th. You'll see at the bottom it says April's total number of school days was calculated incorrectly, so corrected by adjusting the last day from the 20th to 16th. So that's what A is. A is a revised, draft A is a revised version of what you saw last week. All right? So, moving from there, if we look at B, instead of having them all open, I'm just going to have 3 different pieces of paper in front of me, which will be easier. If we look at draft B, and if you look at the second page, we have articulated all of the different changes that are in there, because there's a lot of internal changes here, which changes the first day of school and the last day of school. The first thing that we looked at was if we made August 31st the first day of school for everybody, and we took the grade 6 and 9 orientation and didn't make it a full day of school, but made it a shorter day, maybe an early release or even shorter in the morning, to Tuesday the 30th, we were actually gaining ourselves a day of school there by not going as far into June. So that's the first change. This version of the calendar has us taking Yom Kippur off as a no school day, so we're able to observe Yom Kippur and draft B because we have found these additional days, so we didn't need to extend beyond what we thought was June 20th in the first place. And then we're looking at possibly making the evening conference days that happens twice a year at the elementary schools. They have been no school days in the past. We're looking at making those early release days, and they would count as days of school. That's a possibility, which then allows us some more flexibility within this schedule. In doing that, we had an early release day on October 19th that we're making a full day, because if we're creating additional early release school days on those conference days, we decided we would remove another early release day that existed elsewhere. And I'm moving down the list. So we made the corrections to the dates for the November and March conferences that I just mentioned, so that we know that those are now saying early release as opposed to no school day. We would now take May 2nd would actually become a professional development day for our staff. It's still a no school day for students, but it would become a professional development day for staff, which also allowed us to absorb some of the early release PD time that was lost by making the conference days early release days as well. We did remove the term of Indigenous Peoples Day right now. It was mentioned, actually, one of the members of the committee had actually shared that thought with me as well too, that until it's actually voted, like I had said incorrectly, I thought the state of Massachusetts had already recognized it, and they're in the process of, that's still going through legislation, so I spoke too quickly. I think I confused it with all of the conversations that we had with Juneteenth previously as well too. So we are not against having Indigenous Peoples Day on the calendar. We just said that that's going to actually come up with the state and with the town of Westford, and so we'll kind of take that lead there. And the total, this reduces the total number of teacher days from 185 to 184. So draft B, those are all of the changes that are indicated on draft B. Now draft C, and we would end school on the 15th. Okay, so draft C, if we were to take, in addition to Yom Kippur, which we added on draft B, if we were to take Diwali and Good Friday off as no school days so that we're observing all three of those holidays, that would bring us back to the beginning, and our last day of school would be June 20th again. So we've kind of come full circle. And by all of those internal adjustments, we're able to still end school on June 20th, and we would now be able to observe as no school days 3 holidays that have been a priority that we talked a great deal about. And by doing this, it also, by changing the start day and changing orientation, for the future, it would allow us to see how can we observe other holidays like Lunar New Year, like Eid, depending on, they both are falling on weekends in FY23, so we wouldn't need to be taking them off as a school day. But the other holidays that we are looking to observe, some of them move and sometimes are found on weekends as well too. So, and we would have not as many election days moving forward. So I feel like this sort of flexibility allows the committee a little bit more room moving forward. So that's draft A, draft B, draft C. That's how we got there. We came back to the beginning again. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Alicia.
First, that was so much. It feels like an SAT question with if-thens all over the place.
The 2 trains.
Yes. Thank you so much for all that work, because I think this has been an ongoing conversation about how do we make this as equitable as we possibly can for all of our students and staff. So I have 2 questions. The first is for Kerry. Does draft B and the moving around of the professional development days leave you with enough confidence that you have enough professional development time, especially with the rollout of Power School?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. My second question is students. What do you think? Because you guys, we had a fantastic conversation with you about observances and students not having their particular cultural things centered. And so I would love to hear from our students to see how they feel about, I'm going to say, look at draft B, because draft B seems to be the place where most of that is. So what do our students think?
You can go first.
I totally put you on the spot if you want to.
Yeah. I'm very appreciative of this draft, because this is one of the concerns that I had, and it just feels like the school committee and the town is really listening to me and the students. I am thinking, like, what about Diwali, because it's a half day, and then Yom Kippur is a full day. But I guess if Meghna wanted to.
Well, I'm pretty satisfied with this. I think that honestly, Diwali being a half day is fine, for the reason that Yom Kippur, like, if I'm correct, you have to go to the temple during the day, but our services can, like, they're performed. There's no requirement that they would be performed, at any time during the day. So I think a half day is fine for Diwali. And I mean, I think that it's really good that we found a way to sort of fit in what everyone has been wanting into one calendar. So I'm really happy with this calendar.
I'm happy. I love it.
My own hand to remind myself that I
Also have a question?
Yes.
Don't forget
Yeah.
yourself.
But anyone over here? You guys good? Can we talk about the orientation? Because I don't have personal experience with those yet because my kids are younger, but I feel like we have continually highlighted those, and with our 9 buildings and our grade levels, that those have come up as like a source of pride, right? That we do such a great job focusing on those transitions. So in draft B and C, if it's a professional development day with grade 6 and 9 orientation, can you speak to that and how you envision that? And if all the staffs in professional development, is it student led? Like their kids are just kind of exploring the buildings or what?
So the first thought is, if it was to be early release day, right? Like if it was to be thought of in the same vein as an early release, then it would really be the same thing that takes place in the schools, in the middle school and the academy, just as a half day instead of a full day, which would be some teachers would be working with the students and teaching, and other teachers would not. Okay. And so what we learned even through one of the things through the pandemic was we had to rethink orientations. We had to rethink that because we started school differently. We had Pod A going and Pod B doing something different. So those, we already sort of truncated what those orientations might look like, and we had everybody kind of start at the same time. So when we think about the spirit of the orientation being their ability to be in the building without the other grades in the building, it is honestly a bigger issue at the academy than it is even at the middle school, because the middle school students, the grades are still very much separate from each other. So even though they might all be on the bus together, for example, and they might be coming into the building together, but they don't tend to interact in the hallways because they don't transition at the same time. So a 6th grader could very much still feel like they're the only ones in the building, even if the 7th and 8th graders were there in the first place, right? And our 6th graders are getting to visit the buildings as well. So when we have the move-up day that all of the other grades do, we are going back to providing opportunities for the 5th graders to visit the schools in the first place. So the idea being that if we were to design, whether it was a full early release day, which sounds silly saying that, but like a full early release day, that students would be able to kind of go through and find out places where they are, that would be helpful. The other reality is that even if it was a full day of school, the schedule at the academy is now a drop schedule. So they would have to create an alternate schedule for the students to actually go to every class in the first place anyway, because nobody does that anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea of maybe looking at a 2-hour window, we'd have to look at the logistics of what makes the most sense, but you could have a really effective orientation, allowing students to see the building, allowing students to be the only ones finding where their classes are, and it doesn't have to be a full day where they actually go through all their classes and meet all their teachers. In fact, it might even be overwhelming if they went through the whole day and met all of their teachers. So we think that we can still do that, and it could still be, the morning could be focused on all of the adults at the middle school and the academy sort of coming together to support these students, and then they would have the afternoon, or even more if we did it as a 2-hour window. You know, some of it, we would also have to think of the logistics of transportation.
Just going to ask that, because typically buses provided?
Buses, yeah, because the 6th and 9th graders were going to school the same day as K to, I'm sorry, not K, the K start, but as 1 to 5, right? And so that's been another challenge in our district, is that there were these different layers of who's going to school, and I will say, in this vein, if people can count this, so someone might be mad for me for spelling this out, but I'm just going to share you. The 6th and 9th graders go to school for 181 days. They're the only ones who do it, and they have been doing it. And so it really is voluntary too, right? I mean, it's the 181st, or, you know, it's not really a school day. Mm-hmm. So whether we did provide transportation or whether we didn't provide transportation, we could look at that.
And it is very specific to next year in that we have that second professional development day after the staff return, and that's specific for Power School. And we know that we don't need a full 6 hours of Power School training for the staff, so we would be able to consolidate that into some amount of hours, and which would free up the other part of that day for the 6th and 9th graders at those schools.
Okay. It also feels quite good having the classes all come in from the Wednesday and having 3 full days before
Correct.
that
Yeah.
long weekend. I always find that week is kind of a funny week and it's messy, so that reads to me, quite a smart move actually.
And if you have different kids at different ages, it smooths
Yeah.
it out for families, especially working families who are trying to figure out how they have one set of kids that need coverage. I like that it smooths it out.
Yeah. Gloria.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think we can absolutely do an effective orientation for 6 and 9 in this way. I think for 9th graders, always the valuable thing is being in the building and walking their schedule, figuring out where their classrooms are. That's always like the big concern, and figuring out how do I get from this side of the building to that side of the building in 5 minutes or less. And so I think that can still be effectively done in this fashion. And it gives really our leadership team the opportunity to kind of re-explore how all of that is happening, and this could work for this year, and then they can explore what those options might look like in the future. Regarding the holidays, I just huge shout out for all of the creative thinking and whiteboarding and days counting that went into trying to find some additional flexibility so that we could more appropriately recognize some of these important religious and cultural observances. I'm excited about the idea of voting on a calendar that has a no school day for Yom Kippur. I appreciate the comments that a half day could be helpful to families celebrating Diwali, but I want to put into the mix for discussion a consideration that should also be a full day. I reached out to some young alumni who all resoundingly said that they would really appreciate seeing a full day off for Diwali.
Yeah.
That it is a 5-day celebration. The day off we're looking at is the 3rd day. That is the most important day. And while the celebrations may primarily be in the evening, there's a lot of preparations.
Yeah.
There's a lot of responsibilities that they felt as young adults that were important for them to partake in as part of their family to prepare for those evening celebrations. So they felt by having a full day off on Diwali that they could better fulfill their family obligations and balance those with their schoolwork and their school obligations, and wouldn't be, worried about being in classes that day and having additional homework, and that full day off for Diwali would be really meaningful. So that was the feedback I got.
I think it's over the years I've just been so accustomed to changing things up to fit the school schedule that it is possible that we for Diwali we get dressed and we get ready and we give gifts, but we've always done that before school, so it hadn't occurred to me that when you say the morning, it doesn't have to be 6 o'clock in the morning. It didn't occur to me, but obviously I agree, that would be the optimal thing. There is a lot of preparation that goes into a lot of our rituals and stuff like that. I think I've just become so accustomed to having school over the years that you make it work. You wake up early, you come back from school, you find a way to make it work. But I do know that you guys are under a lot of restrictions in terms of how you can manage the schedule. So if it comes that Diwali is a half day this year, I would encourage that in the future years we could look at how to possibly make it a full day thing. But I do want to say that I really appreciate how much work you guys have put into this, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle that just never quite fits correctly, but this looks really good to me, and I wanted to say thank you.
Chris, do you have some comments?
No, I think those are good comments. Just a reminder, which we said already, but this really is just the calendar for next year because of the peculiarities of elections and where holidays fall. And so, you know, it'll be interesting to see how this all works out for the year, and then we'll kind of see, you know, for next year's calendar for the FY24 school year, like where things will fall out there too. So we'll be doing it again, and I think hopefully starting that process as early as possible. But yeah, again, just the gratitude for making it work to have 3 calendars. I mean, honestly, 3 calendars, 3 different options that all meet the educational and time on learning requirements, and the number of school days is fantastic. It's too many choices for us to choose from, I'm afraid, at this point. So, but we will do our best. And just and just a reminder that you know, this is subject to teacher contracts that are being worked through right now, and so I think with whatever vote we take, it'll have to have that asterisk of pending the teacher contract work that is ongoing.
Yeah, if I could add on that, on behalf of the school negotiation team, you know, Sean, Chris, and myself, for school committee, we just want to give a shout out to the WEA negotiation team in discussing these issues with us. And yes, any vote on the calendar here would be conditional upon the WEA ratification of a 1-year contract. But absolute shout out to their negotiation team and leadership for working with us and talking these issues through.
Yeah, because really this couldn't be possible.
Absolutely.
We would have option A if it wasn't. So ditto. Thank you.
I want to say something that's not on A, B, or C.
No.
It's just
Valerie and D? Seriously?
It's just got me thinking as we talk about the practical observances that, at least in my knowledge and experience, Good Friday is an afternoon
It is.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh, CCD teachers. Yeah. And it strikes me that if that was an early release day, it would bump us back up to the 16th to get out on June 16th instead.
That is true.
So looking
having a
at
full
C,
day.
are you looking at?
She's looking between B and C. She's looking at B.
Yes,
B1.
no, you're right. Yeah. It would be like C, but move Good Friday back to early release,
That's
but
right.
keep
It would
Diwali
be-
and Yom Kippur
it'd be
as
a-
full days.
yeah,
I'm sorry. It would-
Partial, B.5, B.5.
CV1.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know what we call it, but
Yeah.
I actually had similar thoughts, and I went to a major Catholic organization in town, and I checked their website, and Mass for Good Friday is at 7:00 that evening. So I think I know it's a modification than the 3 that we've got on the table, but I think I personally, I'm one of 7, but I personally would be in favor of a calendar that had a half day for Good Friday, which has been our practice in recent years, a full day for Yom Kippur, and a full day for Diwali. I think that shows that we are looking to be sensitive
Practical.
to the holidays,
Right.
how they are observed,
Right.
the impact that they have on students and families, and that we're trying to recognize that. And, you know, with the kind of asterisks going forward, that we would also want to include recognition for Lunar New Year and Eid in this calendar year. You know, those holidays do fall on weekends, but I think those are the holidays we would like to keep an eye on going forward.
Right.
If we can really recognize all of these. I think that adds value, not just to the students who celebrate it, but really to all of our students in setting that example as a school system, that that all of these holidays are important to their peers and their friends and neighbors, and I think that sends a really strong message to our entire school community.
One point as well on the early release for Good Friday, you know, we do end up having Christmas off, so I think we already have, you know, that kind of day observed, so.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, to Gloria and Catherine's points together, is part of observing these holidays is that we're trying to recognize the way our families observe them. Exactly. And if the calendar reflects that we're just observing them all the same way, that's you know, that kind of undermines what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give space for families to observe their holidays in the way they observe them. So Catherine and Gloria, to their point about the half day on Good Friday being what is already done and how it's observed, I think that makes a lot of sense because it's in line with the way the families observe the holidays to begin with.
Well said.
Yep.
My concern is, I think it makes sense as presented, right? Which is that we look at how the holiday is, when it's primarily observed, at what time in the day, and then make a decision as to whether or not it's a half day or a full day. It makes sense on paper. I think logistically we have a working calendar that has been presented in front of us, and then we get back to the issue that we were concerned about in our last discussion, which is now we're saying one holiday is entitled to a half day and another holiday is entitled to a full day. I think if we're gonna do it, we have a working model in 3 here, which gets us to that spot that we wanted to, which was there's several holidays that are full days off. I would say just stick with that. But I mean, that's a good point that Catherine brought up, that Catholics and Christians, I mean, we have Christmas too, but I would say just stick with this.
So I have a question about that.
Yep.
So if we go with C, which keeps all 3 as full days,
Right.
and we end up with 5 snow days,
Yes.
does that move WA graduation?
No.
Because it won't.
No, because our
isn't that
schedule,
interesting?
it's only the scheduled
The
last
scheduled
day.
last
Snow
day.
days do not impact it, which is why we
Okay.
couldn't move to the 21st when we first started talking about
Okay.
the concerns.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, zoned out again.
Yeah. I'm still going to advocate for messy. I hear what you're saying, Sean, but I'll advocate for the messy solution. I think absolutely, you know, Christian holidays have traditionally been celebrated in school systems. We get Christmas, we get Christmas Eve. Diwali is a 5-day celebration. We are providing 1 day. Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are the 3 high holy days. In Judaism, we are providing 1 day. I think it is perfectly appropriate, and we're being fair to everyone if Good Friday remains a half day.
I also think it, you know, as we've said, like, it doesn't impact with Lunar New Year or Eid this year, but who knows, we haven't looked that far, for the following year, and so maybe what we have to just decide is on any year, there is a bit of flexibility to try and, you know, depending on what falls and when. So I also, you know, I'll be honest, I prefer that we're not bringing people back for a half day on a Tuesday at the end of the year on the draft C calendar.
It could happen, like it's happening
It's
this
happening
year.
this year.
Well,
But not planning
Yeah.
for it is also better.
Well, the other thing I would bring up too is just the challenge of adding full days off and then knowing that we're going to go through the process again. And we might, you know, a future committee could say, oh, we're actually only going to do a half day for Good Friday. And I think that's just a little bit harder for the community to kind of go through is adding a full day and then pulling it back. You know, I'm not saying we would, I'm just saying it's a consideration for looking at those half days as an intermediate step so that we don't go full day and then decide because of future calendar challenges, or by trying to be inclusive of other faith holidays or other cultural holidays, need to pull back some of those full days to half days to accommodate those challenges.
Now, are we going to have moms complaining with Diwali that they'll have all the kids at home annoying them while they're making dinner? We did have that comment.
That happened.
Yes. There was
I
one
don't-
mom
I
who
don't think
said,
it was a
"Please have my
complaint."
child in school. I have things I have to do."
That's so funny.
It's a very mom thing to say.
So if you're celebrating Diwali, you have to help out at home. So what are we?
Okay,
So I've given you, I've given you 3 drafts.
Yeah. And then we
You're-
have the
There's
coloring.
discussions about messiness. I would say you have room in these drafts to make adjustments that can be clearly articulated. But yeah, I think your goal was to make a motion and to vote on a calendar. If it's B, if it's anything other than A, it's pending,
Right.
it's pending ratification of a 1-year.
So do we vote on C?
Can we, do we want to just go around and one last time? I think I've kind of lost track that where people are falling on A, B, C, or C prime, or whatever they,
So-
sorry,
C footnote,
would be.
yeah.
I mean,
CA.
Are you
is
looking
that
at?
helpful? When you have multiple choices, it's difficult because a motion would be for one specific calendar. And
Right.
I don't know if we need a round of trying to maybe winnow it down a bit.
Are you looking for a straw poll, Chris? Is that kind of what you're looking for before anybody puts a motion on the floor? Kind of do a go-around
Essentially.
straw poll? I'm happy to start the straw poll since I've advocated for messy. I would be in support of version B modified to have a full day off for Diwali.
Are we going in order?
Sure.
Pick your order.
Sorry, I'm confused, Gloria. Version B modified to
Version
include a
B.
full day. Does that have a full day of Yom Kippur?
So that
Yes,
has
it
a
does
full-
already.
It does.
Full day, so B has, B has a full day for Yom Kippur, a full day for Diwali, and and as written, a half day for Good Friday.
Okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. However, I would say just in terms of that, the superintendent has presented us 3 options. I think the most inclusive in my eyes is option C. So I would lean towards that, but I think B footnoted is a very, very close second.
Yeah, I would support Gloria's proposal.
Yeah, I would be the same.
I would also, with my footnote of next year, come back and find out from the families, how did those observances work out for you? Because to Sean's point, if we find that families, because Good Friday next year is like separated from Easter break, which is, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but because it's separated from Easter break next year, find out from families, was the half day still enough for the observance? You know, this is a conversation we want to have keep going. So I support B with the addition, but then continue the conversation next year and check back in and make sure how things are working out for people.
And do it earlier in the
Do it early, yeah.
I think in October.
September. Start the conversation in September. I think that,
Chris,
Yeah,
I think you're
Chris?
last on straw poll.
Oh, was that everybody? Oh, that was everybody already. Okay. So that's everybody comfortable with B prime, is that correct?
yeah.
Or B asterisk? Do our superintendent or assistant superintendent want to weigh in on that modified B? Because I'm comfortable with that if that's sort of where.
I would say if that's the decision that you want to go with, I would just say, yeah, you'd be voting for draft B with the addition of Diwali being a full day off from school, which would change the last day to June 16th, so that you reflect both of those pieces in it. I think the conversation that you're having is excellent. I do think that, you know, the goal of draft C was to identify 3 days that had been discussed. I feel like, you know, knowing that if we still continue to have a half day on Good Friday, that does allow I think, people to participate in the celebrations in a way that we had talked about the half-day on Yom Kippur not making any sense. So I think collecting more information, because I think we're showing a very specific priority to our community that we value the different observances and that we'll continue to look at it moving forward. So I think it's the difference of whether your scheduled last day is the 16th or your scheduled last day is the 20th. We started with that going to the 20th, and so we already knew that was going to be late. So that's where I feel like draft C kind of made sense in taking us back full circle. I do think there's still a concern about planning to end school that late. So if that's what the committee decides to do, I think that's the best way to articulate it.
Great. I'm going to take a stab at a motion.
Awesome.
Motion to approve the 2022-2023 Westford Public Schools calendar, Draft B, with Diwali as a full day off from school and the last day of school being Friday, June 16th early release, pending ratification of the one-year extension of the contract between the school committee and the Westford Education Association.
Second. And that was perfect.
That earned a double second.
Is that rehearsed? Or?
It was perfect. We're all going to second it. Seconds all around. Unanimous seconds.
So just to reiterate, let's hit the highlights here. First day of school, August 31st. Tentative last half day of school, Friday, June 16th. Full day off for Yom Kippur, full day off for Diwali, half day off for Good Friday. Did I hit the highlights?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, just making sure. I know what we're voting for as well. Okay, any final discussion?
Can I just note actually that I do appreciate we have used that May 2nd town election day for adding that professional development day.
Yeah.
It was really eking me that we would have the schools closed.
Yeah.
It felt inefficient, so I appreciate that.
I just had a quick question about the May 2nd date. Usually APs run through that week, and I was at least this year we have one on May 2nd. So I was just wondering if it was a half day, how would that work?
It's a no school day. There's professional development that takes place, but it's a no school day. So APs would be held, just like they're being held on town election this year. APs would still happen.
Okay, I see.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
No, let's let the students go home.
Yes, all right, I'm gonna call for the vote then. All in favor of the motion as eloquently stated by Valerie. This will be a roll call vote. Gloria?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. That's 6-0. The calendar B modified passes.
Yay.
Just thank you to everybody. I mean, what a great, I feel like it's been a really good community conversation that I know we've taken our time maybe more than people want us to, who are itching to get the calendar, but I'm glad that we did. I think it's let us talk about these things in a really good way. And again, we get to do it again next year. And so we get to have these conversations again, and see how we're feeling about all of this. So, but it's good to get that passed. So thanks everyone.
When can the community expect a new
Version to be posted?
Yeah. Like midday tomorrow or?
Yeah, well, I mean, we are waiting for the ratification of.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I would say this week, though.
Okay,
This week we
great.
definitely did. I will say the behind-the-scenes work on the calendar has definitely been one of the more surprising aspects of this role. That's one that I would not have thought was going to take up as much of our time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
Thank you. Nice.
And I'd like to thank Sandy Abramo, who's my admin assistant,
Yes,
who
who's
has been
done-
the one
oh, thank you,
person
yes.
behind the scenes who has been revising, and at one point I could just see the calendar numbers floating in her head, in her vision.
Dreaming about it.
Exactly.
Let's start with, I'm sorry, Sandy.
Sorry to cause yet another
I'm sorry,
revision to
but-
that document. Sorry.
Should I have apologized when I brought
It's funny because I figured there was somebody else with eyes on it, and so it's good to hear that it's Sandy. That's great. Okay, we're going to move on to American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Phase 2 requests that are going to Select Board for their meeting tomorrow.
Great, thank you. So the Finance Subcommittee has sort of spearheaded this school year. As you probably remember, there was a Phase 1 in the fall for sort of COVID/urgent requests that the Select Board has been had approved sort of by January. And then they sort of opened up again a Phase 2 for basically anything else. So the town-wide list ranges from things that would normally fall on our capital lists to sidewalks, just it ranges from a lot of different departments. So we put our heads together and sort of had been asking staff for ideas. The Finance Subcommittee has sort of brainstormed, and we have come up with the list in the packet that we have included in the Select Board's meeting packet for tomorrow. We're not sure if they'll be actually approving things tomorrow or just starting to work their way through the list. I do plan to share with them that we do at least have some urgency around the Bridge to Success Summer Intervention Program. So that's first on your list in the packet, and that will not happen without this funding. And there is some time sensitivity to that because they need time to know that the funding is happening and then set it up and hire and, notify parents and get all that, that work in place. Next on the list is a request to reflect the substitute daily rate increase. I'm sure everyone remembers that we approved temporarily increasing that in November from 80 to 100 in hopes to attract additional candidates. And the current impact to the FY22 budget as well as the projected impact through the end of this school year total is $67,070. So that is a request. Additional training for safety care to sort of widen the pool of staff that can join those crisis teams that we hear about. That would be $10,880. There's also a request for a design plan for the Nabnasset walkway and car path. So this might be new to some. There's a neighborhood walkway that's been raised, I think, through Healthy Westford or the Pedestrian Safety Committee. It's in dire need of repairs if you've walked it with a stroller or a bike or something. And there's also the car drop-off path to Nabnasset. Because of COVID and the increase in car riders, they really need like a double path to go through there. But they've been making it work, but then it gets slimmed down in the winter because you can't plow what isn't paved. And Paul has been working with DPW to figure out their bandwidth for a project like that hasn't gone through the capital process. And so the quote in there is for an external design process. There's also a request for restorative practices training and coaching. Chris, did you want to speak to this?
Sure. This would be going far beyond what we've seen as a restorative approach to events this year, and this would be about finding a way to more intrinsically embed restorative practices into our schools, especially at the high school level and maybe at the middle school level as well. So bringing restorative, community building restorative work just into classrooms, and the goal being that you do this to build capacity and empathy and communication skills, so that you don't have events that require more acute reactive response. And so you're building community, and so this would be over 3 years. And we've talked to the consultants we've worked with about what that could look like potentially, bringing that in a 3-year period, starting with pilot programs, and adding that to our schools over that time frame. And I'm happy to answer any questions people have on that.
Thank you.
Can I ask Chris a question? Chris, would that training, kind of coaching, consultation, would that involve then actually looking at our code of conducts, like the handbooks? Is it that kind of in-depth knowledge there?
I think that would be a parallel activity. I wouldn't say that this is paying for us looking at those, but I think it's a chance to look at how we're setting up community standards and codes of conduct, and how we want to just kind of be together, students and staff. And so it does offer an opportunity to reflect on that in new ways, I would say. And it definitely could inform potential, if people wanted to bring potential changes forward. There's certainly the opportunity.
And the idea would be that it's initially targeting WA and the middle schools, but do you see that being in the elementary schools by the end of the 3 years?
Well, I think that's still TBD a little bit. I think there's a sense that some of that type of community building circle work is happening at the elementary level, and so we'll have to look more at that, and Dr. Chu can talk, if he has more specific thoughts on that. But the initial thought was that there's less of that sort of community building activity at the higher levels, and so that might be a place to start.
Yeah,
but I think there's opportunity, and it's still a little bit TBD on what the right way to bring it in is. I think you want to bring it in a pilot fashion where you're not shoving it across all schools, all grades, all classrooms at once, but you're identifying staff who have an interest and inclination to start training on this and bringing it into their classrooms, and then you grow it from there.
Is the focus of this then just on the racial disparity?
No.
no.
No, not at all. I mean,
Okay.
so the whole idea with restorative practices is you are finding a way, you're doing restorative circles, not necessarily on topics that are as heavy as you might think. It's about community building and teaching people to listen and communicate well, to see each other as people, to be able to empathize and listen. And then certainly at the very basic level, that's what you're doing. But then you can also layer in those more difficult conversations. So part of that work that you do then, as you build trust, and as you have a group of people who are meeting in this way, you start to trust one another, and you can bring in and layer in topics such as racial concerns, social emotional concerns. I know we met with our student council before the last meeting, and we talked about that, how they wish they had an opportunity to talk to their peers in a safe way about their own stresses. And so it's really a mechanism for having any number of conversations, but it's grounded in building trust, building empathy, building communication in groups.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
I just wanted to add 2 points to sort of reemphasize from our finance subcommittee discussions was, yes, that I feel like we were trying to be careful about how to word it, because like when the select board or the wider community sees this, we've been using the restorative word, right, with our recent work, and this particular line item can have so many more uses that it's really important to sort of help educate on the uses of this in your toolbox, right? And then I just wanted to reiterate a point Dr. Chu was making, which was that the elementary levels have that sort of classroom structure that lends itself to these sort of morning meeting and circle time and stuff like that, whereas I believe at the high school that sort of structure isn't really there yet. So that's why the focus would really be on them to start. And then if that's, I also really appreciate how it's a 3-year proposal, so that things that, my understanding anyway, is that things that we are learning at the staff could more easily translate to elementary, because they already have those structures. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, that's great. The idea being that our elementary schools and our middle schools as well too,
Right.
the way in which their day is built and the way in which the students are organized in the classrooms, and then at the middle school having their advisory that meets every single day, provides a framework where we can be sharing the essential questions, different protocols that they might be bringing that the teachers might not be familiar with. But I mean, our elementary schools literally start in circles every single day.
Right.
You know, so the idea of building that community, so it would be sort of sharing new talking points with them. But the idea we heard from both Hannah and Megna just when they talked about some of the conversations that they were having with the ADL leaders, that they preferred having them in some of their classes because they don't have advisory enough in order for that space to feel like it would make for a meaningful conversation. So what we talked about is, maybe, we're not saying we're definitely going to do this specifically, but one idea would be to pilot this with the freshmen as they transition into the academy, and then grow with them as they go through, so that they became, we create either more specific advisory opportunities for them, or we're embedding this into a class that they all have, like their English class or social studies class or something to that effect, to figure out how the framework could better support it.
Next on the list is the district-wide communications tool that Dr. Chu has been researching, called Aptogee, and that would not just be a family-facing app, which would house lunch menus and other various teacher communications and principal communications, but it also would include a website redesign. And then the plan, just like kind of how we did Power School and iPass, would be to overlap for a year. And so this request would specifically be the sort of pilot year. And then we would obviously wrap the future operating costs into our budget.
Any question on that one?
Yep.
Do you see that as being a vehicle for communication about things like the unanticipated bus interruption, that sort of thing? Is it a real-time communication platform?
It can be, yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it does. It allows us to interact through a very specific mobile app that would be free to all families. So we had explored an app a number of years ago, but it was at a cost for people, and so this would be part of our cost would be that this would be free to all families, and they would have, through the app, they would have access to all of the website information in a very user-friendly manner.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows us to push things out in a social media style framework that is not necessarily using. So we would have a news feed that could be specific to their school. It could be district-wide. They depending on where their kids were located, they would get those different pieces going through the app, so they'd get those notifications. It would allow us also, if we were using, if we wanted to post something to Facebook and Twitter or Instagram at the same time from our end, we could do it one-stop shopping, as opposed to right now, if I send something out, I have to post it, send it out through Blackboard, then I have to post it, make sure that it's ready to go on the website, hopefully that link is accurate, and so it allows for more streamlined communication. And to Valerie's point, the purpose here would be allowing us to have both so that we could transition.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you.
Next request is for the elementary gymnasiums to have installed ceiling projectors. So we heard a request, this was originated from a staff request, that as COVID evolved, that they were keeping those kids all separate, and they would do like a little video demo for PE class or wellness, and they were wheeling out a projector cart with the wires and like setting up the cones, and kids stay away, and then it was like creating more unexpected behaviors for that disruption to be happening. So, and in those schools, the K-5 schools, a lot of times the gymnasiums are also where they house their community meetings. So this would also just be an upgrade for how they deliver those assemblies. The next item is water bottle refill stations. Almost all of our schools have at least one of these, but we would love to make a request for 20 units and prioritize them among the schools that need more. The next request is for membership into the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education, which assists with producing career opportunities for educators and administrators from diverse backgrounds. So like access to job fairs, and it's a collaborative relationship to enhance staff diversity. And the final request is a funding for 2 community workshops with KW Diversity, which you may remember is founded by Dr. Khalees Warnham, and for some continuity, the district staff have been receiving PD from her, so it's a great sort of mirrored message to our families. She offers 2 specific workshops, and the titles are How to Help Young Kids Discuss Racism and Culture, and the other is called Defining Implicit Bias. So we thought that those tie in nicely with our community work happening right now, and also give that continuity to the staff side, professional development. Whew. So that is our phase 2 list. And, you know, like I said, we're not really sure how tomorrow night's going to go. We assume Select Board will start working their way through some approvals. And I'll just keep you updated through that, if there's any questions. Yes, Catherine.
Just curious as to our potential flexibility with maybe adding or changing some of these. One of the things that kind of struck me was that I felt there wasn't necessarily as much kind of direct impact on kids that I would have liked to have seen. I know we've the community workshops and the diversity there, and we have the restorative practices, again, I suppose through that lens of equity. But I'm just wondering, and we heard it from actually, our nurses tonight, and then our school counsellors, about how they're seeing this anxiety in the schools. And so one of the things I would love to see that we're addressing through this ARPA funding is how can we specifically tackle this anxiety we're seeing, be it hiring, an outside consultant to come in and really work with us. Maybe it's that we consider putting Zen dens in all of our elementary school buildings. I know Day has, which some of us saw, I can't remember who was on the tour, the Zen den that Day have, which is such a lovely space for those kids. So that's kind of one of my main areas, is that I don't necessarily know if we're fully addressing some of the mental health needs we're seeing just with this list. And I know it was of concern to parents, way back when in the fall when Kerry came with that survey to do with the ESSER, that social emotional was the top priority, and through numerous conversations with various families over recent weeks and months, it's definitely something that's sticking out. So
I'm gonna chime in quick and then certainly open it. I just wanted to add that the Finance Subcommittee certainly talked about that we were trying to make a conscious effort not to fund positions, right, ongoing positions, and then a couple of requests that came up and discussions that were had were related to professional development, which is currently not in need of funding. So those are 2 areas that could relate that are missing from this list because of those reasons. So, but if anybody else wanted to speak to.
Do we know what the professional development for next year will actually look like? Or, that now looks like 5 days based on our new calendar, have we an idea of what kind of topics are necessarily being planned for those?
We haven't ironed out all of the details yet. We wanted to get the calendar in place. Big picture, we think that we have an idea that it's going to continue talking about making sure each individual student feels as though they belong. That can be approached in many different directions. We're going to reflect on where we are at the end of this year. We still have a couple of professional development days left, but we also wanted to make sure that we bring on the new Director of Equity, Curriculum, and Instruction to participate in that conversation. So we haven't ironed out the details yet.
Okay. When does that typically kind of get planned, or?
Usually May or June, because we try to button that up with the coordinators, the counselors, people who are still in session, because then they go off for the summer. So we might iron out some of the details over the summer of implementation, but we tend to have a framework by the time school gets out.
Yeah, I do think the anxiety piece might be worth, you know, investigating or maybe focusing on a bit more, because as our teachers are telling us, you know, they're seeing an increase in behaviors, and we know behaviors are communication, and sometimes, you know, what is actually anxiety is maybe being interpreted as a behavior rather than kind of getting to the root cause. So I do think I could see that being of huge benefit to all our staff members, and particularly if it's in the younger years where they don't have that ability maybe to verbalize, they maybe don't even understand or realize what that anxiety actually is. So I think it would be something that we should maybe consider as we go on this spring.
The safety care training, which I really appreciate, because in line with what Catherine was saying, a large part of safety care training is de-escalation. So I really appreciate that there's more positions here. Where do you yet foresee where those positions will be? Are they mostly elementary? Are there any at the middle or high school?
Well, what we'd be looking to do is to build a capacity in each building's team.
Okay.
Right? So to look to see how many people are in the specific school, and then reassess, because we have situations where we have trained people and then they've left, right? So we want to make sure, similar to kind of what we've talked about even with the reading interventionists earlier, we want to put the resources where the greatest need is first.
Okay. Related to that, Chris, is the safety care training, is that primarily teaching assistants who receive that training, or is it just?
It's teachers, administrators, and teaching assistants. It's staff in the building who would be supporting students. Yeah.
Okay.
They essentially work like a crisis team. So they would get a call to say, there's this situation, can you come to this place? So it's not like they're working with a kid because of the safety care training.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just shout out and thank you to the Finance Subcommittee for all the work that went into this.
Thanks. Move. Oh, good.
Can I just follow up? I know I submitted a request to follow up on the decodable texts. Did we hear anything back on that request?
We didn't have enough data for it, so we can still look at that for the future, but I didn't necessarily know that whether there was still a need for them or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When do you think that's something we could look into then? Okay.
Chris, you want to move us on to restorative process?
Yep. And I'll start by saying I think it's been since our last meeting, right, that a number of us attended the event in Wayland that was headed up by their Human Rights, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and I'd say it was really nice to get to go down there and meet some of our counterparts and just citizens of Wayland in general. The evening was a little bit diversity training or diversity workshop with a little chance for some breakout interaction in small groups, which was really nice. But again, I would say I was most heartened by the number of Westford folks who made the drive down to Wayland, and just that opportunity to connect with the folks there. And I know that they were grateful. The Wayland community and the organizers were grateful for everyone who did come out and attend that. I think the conversations I had, we agreed, hopefully won't be the last interaction we get to have. I know as we've talked, and we'll talk more about it, there's, work and communication ongoing. And so this will be not the last bit of interaction we have with Wayland. We are still looking for a follow-up restorative circle from the one we canceled 2 weeks ago, or the one we postponed. So I thought we have a date by tonight. We don't, but we'll have one soon. And so I know people were anxious to get a chance to participate in that again. And I'll ask if Dr. Chu has anything to add.
Just in addition to that, and yes, attending the town hall, which again, I also, I'm grateful that so many of you were able to go, and members of the select board were there, and other members from the community. It was very encouraging that Westford had a strong contingent that went there. I thought it was great. Both Principal Antonelli and the Wayland High School principal have continued communicating. They've been working with the two athletic directors as well too, and I know that they were coming up with a proposal and a plan to kind of bring the spring athletes together, and that I know they were looking forward to presenting that to me and Dr. Easy as well too. They were having the conversations first to kind of iron out some possibilities. So I'm anticipating that we'll hear more about that probably before. Well, I'll hear more about it and can share more on the 25th.
Great. No questions here.
No.
Okay.
We're good, Chris.
Yep.
So I couldn't hear, no additional comments or questions from the
Yeah, we're
committee.
good. You can move. Alicia already grabbed the mic. She's ready to go.
Are we all still awake? We're ready for the policy update?
Let's do it. We're moving on to the policy updates for the 7 policies that we introduced last week.
Yes. So first things first, public comment is still open and will remain open through the 13th. Policy Subcommittee will meet on the 15th to review any public comments and any feedback we get from here tonight. I won't bore everyone with the work that was put into them. I will again say that most of this is statutory, some of it is organizational. I do want to call attention to one of the feedback things that we got from KP Law was they did highlight for us that there were rules that came out about remote participation through COVID. Now, in policy, we try not to make long-term policy based on short-term events, and because a lot of those things will fall away, they're not included in the current policies. They're not in our drafts. However, we would recommend, and KP Law would recommend, taking another look at that the next time something gets updated. And I know that the legislature is talking about potentially making remote participation in meetings something that's permanent. So the policy subcommittee would recommend reviewing these policies once more information comes out from the legislature. Beyond that, most of this is a statutory update or just a clarification of language or a reflection of practices we're already doing that brings our policy back in line. So with that, I will open it up to any questions and remind everyone we will discuss this again next week, 2 weeks from now. Like April vacation is wiped out in my brain, so I'm like next week. So we will discuss these again at the meeting on the 25th. So if you don't feel like you're quite ready to discuss it tonight, that's fine. But if anyone has any comments or questions, let us know. I know it's a lot.
I was wondering, have we gotten any public comment?
0, nothing.
Okay.
Now that I've said that, but public comment is open until the 13th. So does anyone have any questions for us tonight? No?
And Alicia, if they if someone does want to make a public comment, they can just do that through the school committee email?
It's on the webpage. If you go to the webpage under policies, there's literally a link that you can go in and make public comment right there, and it automatically goes into Airtable, and policy subcommittee sees it right away. So you don't have to email us, you just have to do it on the webpage through the form, and it goes directly to us.
Great.
It just wouldn't be a policy update without mentioning our table.
I know, Airtable, Airtable.
Gotta get it out there. Send the people to the right spot.
Yes. I don't have anything else if we're good.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, and we'll have it on our next agenda for a vote. That's good stuff. Okay, and with that, we're going to go to personnel update, which is in our packet. Anything to point out there?
Oh, question from Gloria?
I just, on a personal note, I just wanted to make a shout out to Ken Culver, who's been the conductor and leader of our Westford Academy Orchestra for very many years, had a significant impact on one of my children who plays music to this day because of Ken Culver. So shout out to Ken. Will be on a leave of absence next year, and he will be missed. But wish him well.
Anything else?
Thanks, Gloria.
Great. Before we adjourn, I was just reminded that it is election season, and for anyone still watching us, a reminder that the League of Women Voters is hosting Candidates Night on this Wednesday, April 13th, and information is on their website. I'm sure it's lwv.westford.org.
It is, you're right. Nicely done.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Gloria?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. That's unanimous.